Sign up to the Boxing Showtimes app, guys. This is Paulie Malignaggi for Paulie TV. You do not want to miss out on the chance to know all your fight times, for all your boxing matches, all the networks, and all the bars that are showing the fight in your area where you can watch with fellow boxing fans. Check it out, Boxing Showtimes app. Best fighters from the UK. What is your opinion? This one is one up for debate, as are many boxing topics. I'm Paulie Malignaggi for Paulie TV. Like, comment, subscribe. Let's get into it. For me, I mean, obviously, England has produced the most fighters out of the UK. And when I think of the best fighter from England, I probably think of Randolph Turpin. You know, he was a fighter in the 50s. He has a win over Sugar Ray Robinson when Robinson, I think, came over to England to fight him. Terrific fighter. Obviously, if you have a win over Robinson, you're automatically among the elite, especially of that era. In an era where it was very difficult to be elite because boxing was so high level and there were so many people fighting because it was more poverty-driven people post-World War II era where people were just, you know, looking to come out of poverty, looking to come out of a bad situation, and there was a lot of high-level boxing there, you know. So for me, Randy Turpin is probably the best fighter from England to ever have lived. After that, it kind of gets tricky, you know. You got some heavyweights in the Ali era, but none of them were able to beat Ali, right? You got Sir Henry Cooper, right? That was a guy who was very popular, but, you know, we can't put him in the top 5 of England ever, right? I mean, top 5 English fighters ever. So I started getting a little bit closer, right? I started getting a little bit closer to my era. You know, you got guys like Lloyd Hunnigan, who was a good fighter. He knocked out Donald Curry, who at the time was, you know, pretty much the monster in boxing. And Lloyd Hunnigan was able to knock him out. Then you've got that era where you had Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank, Michael Watson, all terrific fighters. Had a great rivalry, you know. And again, I'm just throwing in the names because I start to realize as I think about them how much more difficult it is to kind of come up with a standard top 5 where you have to pick a standard top 5. Also during that era, you have Lennox Lewis. I mean, Lennox Lewis won a gold medal for Canada in the Olympics, but you know, as a pro, he fought for England. I don't know. Do you guys consider him a legitimately English fighter, or do you guys say, oh, he was in Canada, although Canada was a Commonwealth, right? So Canada, I guess it still stands as UK. But what do you guys think about Lennox being in the list? For me, if he is on this list, you know, he's probably at number 2 at this point. You know, he's even got an argument for number 1 if you really think about it. During the same era, you had Frank Bruno, a high-level fighter, won a WBC heavyweight title, and then you start to move into the next era. You know, you get Junior Witter and Ricky Hatton. I think Witter in his prime is a bit underrated. Really was a tough guy to deal with, very awkward, solid puncher. And had some good fights and pretty much was avoided by a lot of guys, you know. People would have rather fought Ricky Hatton where there was a lot of money and than fighting a tricky guy like Junior Witter, who wasn't as popular, but for me was very, very dangerous. You start to get into the, I guess Wales is part of the UK, right? I mean, so you got Joe Calzaghe. You can't have a conversation without Joe Calzaghe being in there. And Joe Calzaghe possibly, you know, may start out, you may put him at 3. You know, you have Turpin 1, Lennox 2, and Calzaghe 3. I think Calzaghe's a solid number 3. So that's a pretty solid list as we go through the eras, right? You got Calzaghe. Carl Froch was also during that era. Another terrific fighter. I mean, Froch. Yo, listen. For me, Froch was a guy that Calzaghe should have fought. He should have fought Froch. I would have loved to see that domestic battle. And that's one thing about that became disappointing about the boxers in England. You went from an era where in the 90s, Watson, Eubank, and Benn fought each other like crazy, and even a guy like Steve Collins was in that mix, although he's Irish and they're not technically part of the UK. I think Collins was born in Ireland. I'm not sure though. I know the Irish claim him, so technically he's not part of the UK, if that's the case. But you went from an era where all those guys fought each other to then Witter and Hatton not fighting each other, Froch and Calzaghe not fighting each other, and then Khan and Brook fighting each other their last fight of their careers, you know, where instead of fighting in their prime. So you sort of get like a little bit of a downer in terms of English boxing. You had some terrific fighters that you've created, but then all of a sudden, when they were in the same country, they didn't want to fight each other. I mean, even Lennox and Frank Bruno fought each other, you know? So that gets a little bit tricky. And from an outside perspective like myself, from a guy from the outside like myself, it gets a little bit frustrating to have had to watch that and see that, because as an outsider who's, you know, has no dog in the fight, has no horse in the race, I just was a boxing fan that wanted to see these fights and didn't get to see them. And even Khan and Brook, I would have loved to see them in their prime as opposed to at the end of their careers. And, so it gets a little bit disappointing. I think out of Scotland, you got Ken Buchanan and Josh Taylor. Listen, maybe I'm a little bit partial towards my era, but I think Josh Taylor is a better fighter than Ken Buchanan. Regardless of his last fight with Jack Catterall fought a great performance, and I thought Catterall beat Josh Taylor in that fight. But nonetheless, I look at what Josh Taylor looks like at his best, the way he's been fighting. Not to say that Catterall should be underrated. That performance by Catterall was very, very astute, and he really frustrated the hell out of Josh Taylor. When I watch Josh Taylor's best performances, I don't know. I just feel like he was a better fighter than Ken Buchanan when I watch some of his performances, But nonetheless, you've got Buchanan and Taylor in the mix. I got to be honest, guys. My top five, I'm having trouble picking a 4 and 5 here. I gave you Turpin, Lewis, and Calzaghe. After that, you've got some difficult choices, man. You've got some really difficult choices. Eubank was a monster. Ben was a monster. Froch was a monster. Where do I go here? What do I do? Lloyd Hunnigan was very good. He was a little bit before my time, but Lloyd Hunnigan was very good. Listen, he beat Donald Curry at a time where Curry was very difficult to beat, the ragamuffin man, So it starts to get really tough. I remember being posed a question when I was in England and doing a media scrum. It was who would have won, Lloyd Hunnigan or Kell Brook? This was during Kell's prime, and I said Kell Brook, and I was like, I remember, some people didn't like that answer, But, I guess I'm going to be a little bit more partial towards my era. And then you've got, the modern era, like Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, even Dillian White. Listen, you've got a solid thing going here. And, you got guys on the come up like Josh Buatsi, who I think has a terrific future. Lawrence Okolie, a very good fighter as well. He's a world champion at cruiserweight and a really difficult guy to deal with. Again, it's a very difficult top 5 to pick. You've got all these picks, and I got my top 3 settled pretty strongly. But man, you start to try to add 4 and 5, and you've got a big list, and it's hard to actually pick one guy over the other in a lot of ways. Let me know what you think. Maybe you can finish my top 5 for me. Who's 4? Who's 5? Let me know what you think of my top 3. I think you will agree my top 3 is pretty strong. I can't really think of to take those guys out of the top 3. I think if you make a top 5 of all UK's best, you gotta have those guys in the top 3. But let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe. This is Paulie Malignaggi for Paulie TV. Of course, we cannot have a discussion about British boxing without the first British champion to do the double. That was James Degale. He scored an Olympic gold medal in the 2008 Olympics and then went on to win a world championship. I think the Olympics in 2008 were in China. And then he went on to win a world championship, which ironically, I considering all the great champions England has had, I couldn't believe that he was actually the first one that through all the generations of great English champions. But James Degale became the first one. And then shortly thereafter, they went from never having done it before James to suddenly doing it right away afterwards, as Anthony Joshua also won a gold medal in 2012, and then later on became world heavyweight champion. So certainly British boxing has had its share of great rivalries, great fighters. I can remember Degale and George Groves also having another great British rivalry as well. It's a terrific rivalry. It was all British as well. And, they've had their share of great British rivalries. Unlike some of those rivalries, though, Degale and Groves did end up fighting. I think they fought a couple times in the amateurs. They fought early in their pro careers as well. I think a lot of people would have liked to see them fight later on in their careers as well. They both became world champions. They kind of both came up the ladder through their boxing lives, kind of mirroring each other back and forth. James did get the gold medal, so he ends up one-upping Groves, but I think Groves got the win when they fought early on in their careers, though. So anyway, a good rivalry nonetheless. Great British rivalry, as there have been so many. Like I said, I sort of get disappointed when some of them don't end up fighting, like Froch and Calzaghe, and then also Hatton and Witter never ended up fighting. But for the most part, I think when guys end up fighting each other, they end up pretty loved. They end up pretty respected, especially by the British public, especially when they fight at international level in big fights like the Ben Eubank and Watson rivalries. Those were, for me, the best rivalries in British boxing and maybe all of boxing in general. But yeah, I can't forget Degale doing the double, 2008 Olympic gold medalist, and then becoming the first Olympic gold medalist from England. winning to win a world championship. Anthony Joshua followed him thereafter.
If you're a boxing fan and never want to miss a fight, Boxing Showtimes is the app you need. This is a professional boxing schedule in your pocket that keeps you up to date on what's going on in the world of boxing. Enjoy watching fights in a bar, sipping a cold one? We got you. An interactive map with your local boxing bars is available to you at any time. And that's not everything. Set reminders, buy tickets, watch official highlights, get boxing news, and so much more. Download now. Thank us later.